It's my pleasure to introduce Sheri Hopkins. She started teaching at Beaver Brae Secondary School. When, Sheri?
Officially in 95.
95. So she has been with KPDSB. Was it Kenora?
It was Kenora Board of Education at that time, yeah.
And more recently, she has been part of KPDSB's Central Special Education Team. That's one of her latest projects. She's going to talk to us about it today. She's a member of the Rapid Response Northern School Team since its inception in 2018. This small team of educators travels to First Nations communities to support school staff and students with schools reopening following a crisis or a tragedy that might have happened in the community. We also, glasses would have made this easier. We also provide mentorship and professional development to educators in the North. It is my pleasure to introduce Sheri, and I know she's going to have some interesting information for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for welcoming me. I really like talking about the work of our little team. And I was saying to Lynn when I came in, it's not often that we get to speak about our work outside of educational circles, right? Because we are focused on the education component, and so I'm really grateful for the opportunity. We are a very small team. There are only 4 of us. Last year there were only 2 of us. The staffing problems that exist post-COVID also impacted us in education, but I'm very happy to be orienting 2 new team members so that we are a full team of 3 for the travel that we do. We are 100% publicly funded by the Indigenous branch of the Ministry of Education, including their Wellbeing Division. We work very closely with Anishinaabe First Nation. So my supervisor, Shannon Bailey, Superintendent of Education here, works very closely with Grand Chief, of course, with Treaty 3. And we are a team of educators. We aren't social workers. We do most of our work, though, in Treaty 9. And so that tends to be where we go. Our primary purpose is crisis support. So when there is a crisis in a First Nation community, there is lots of support that floods into the community, but it always goes to the epicenter of the crisis. And there is no one that is supporting the school reopening, no one that is looking for vulnerable students, no one supporting the staff, many of whom are community members and impacted. And so we are there to bolster the staff. We never go in to take over, but we go in to bolster the staff so that schools open more quickly during or post-crisis and stay open as safe havens for students and for staff alike to keep that programming, that structure going. That interim support, we don't take over and we don't stay for very long. Which is okay, because we do have the opportunity, should the principal and community teams want us to go back and just continue any of the work that we started, or to start the work that came up while we were there during the crisis. So, which is a really nice, that the ministry has allowed us to do that. That is recognize the importance of the relationship that happens when you're problem solving through a crisis, and allow us to continue that relationship in the work that is our primary work, which is ensuring a great education for all of our youth in Ontario. So that educational support can look like staff mentoring, it can look like modeling, it can look like helping to set up a reading program if that is what your school needs. Mentorship and consultation always. And then when we talk about transitions in education, what we're meaning here is transition support for youth. We have to recognize that, and lots of people don't realize this, but our remote communities are not funded and they tend to lack the infrastructure and resources to have high school. And so at the age of 14, potentially, parents are having to decide what grade 9 is going to look like for their child. And quite often it's either an opportunity, an option of either going full internet school and stay in community, or send their child out to billet or board in a completely unfamiliar community so that they can attend high school. Most of our Treaty 9 partners to the west, so and when I say west, I say go north of Thunder Bay, west to the Manitoba border, have lots of choices as well. So they aren't all flooding to Dennis Franklin Cromartie School. They might be going to Thunder Bay schools and any of our Kuwait and Patricia District schools as well, not just Silicon and Red Lake, but we have students coming from great distances to Beaver Brae Dryden High School as well. And so that transition support that we do is to try and make that transition easy, which feels like an impossible task because it's impossible. I billeted for our midget thistle team for 10 years and had 15-year-olds first time away from home. And I was co-parenting, with their parents. And it was just for a short time of the year. And you hear the struggles of those students to go such a distance and to have such a different community, to leave a very small community where you know and are so close to everyone to come to complete. It makes the transition work that we do feel like an absolutely impossible task. So here's my little team. We are 4 middle-aged, non-Indigenous educators. And we do take a little bit of heat for that sometimes, but we are who we are. Shannon Jessamine, who is just on the far left. I hope it's your left too. We just seconded, she's another administrator from Thunder Bay. And then Kelly and Miranda are both teachers here with elementary and elementary assignments just coming right out of the classroom. Our crisis response can be anything, and it really has been anything. We responded to North Spirit Lake. We were there quite almost 3 weeks in total because of a state of emergency due to water. And people would say, why would you go for a water crisis? And I would say, have you ever been in a community that's having a water crisis? And I don't mean that the water's off for 6 hours. I mean that the water is often unsafe for 9 months. And how hard it is to keep a school open day by day. Can we flush enough toilets? Do we have enough drinking water? The strain and pressure on the community when there is a water crisis. We were in North Spirit Lake for quite some time. We support evacuations for whatever reason, and then of course we absolutely respond to schools when there is a death of a youth or community member that is impacting at the school level. We have to be flexible. Our living conditions when we go to community are safe, but they're not necessarily comfortable, so we aim to go into community self-sufficient. We aim to go in with everything that we need to clothe, and we will go with cots if necessary. We have a kitchen bin, we have teacher supply material bins, so that and all of our food for a week, and we always fill either our weight limits if we're schedule flighting or every available space on those tiny little charter flights if we're chartering with consumables. Food supplies are tricky in the north, and during a time of crisis in particular are actually at a very dangerous level of supply. They just can't handle the influx of people. So we always aim to go into community with everything we need other than a roof over our head. We've camped out in schools while we were there. We have lived in very close quarters, kind of camped out in teacherages, on the floor, on the couch, setting our cots up, whatever it takes to not be an additional strain on the community. And then being a free service also is to the communities, it also really helps, as there is high rates of poverty in the north for sure. Our educational support is only limited by what we can either provide individually or what we can source out, because we have the whole of the Kuwait and Patricia District School Board and all of the expertise of our colleagues here to draw off of. And the educational support is limited. We're just planning a deployment to Yamatong, so that is Fort Hope they lost their school to a fire last January. This will be our 4th trip to Fort Hope, and they are trying to transition to forest school. So outdoor learning, land-based education is something that we're really working very closely with Yamatong on. We have some great outdoor experiential learning experts in QA and Patricia that we draw off of, and that is where we get to see the reciprocal opportunities for us, because the land-based education, the medicines, the survival skills, the land-based, the culture, the history, the stories about our land, that's what we are able to learn and bring back to Treaty 3 and to our educators. And then we can bring some teaching strategies for teachers that come from the outside, from all over the place, whether it's Teach for Canada or privately, into community to teach that might not be comfortable taking their kids outside, and might not realize how much healing and joy that we get from these beautiful lands that we live in. So we have tons and tons and tons of educational opportunities to support. Our best practices of the team is to go only when requested. So we are not going in to take over. We want to be on the same page with Chief and Council and what Chief and Council is determined for school and school reopening, and then be on the same page with the principal and admin team of the school. So we only go when requested, that we go self-sufficiently so that we aren't a strain on community while we are there. Complete flexibility. It's really hard as an educator to not be planned and to not overplan and to not go in with a firm plan, but we can't. We have to be flexible. We have to be willing to pivot and willing to do exactly. We're way beyond going in and telling people what they need to do, including our students. We don't tell our students anymore, right? We don't tell them what we think is best for them. We ask them what your goals are. What do you want to be? And then we set up the learning for them so that they can be whatever they want to be. We need to take that flexibility into the north. It's hard for my new teachers to get their head around that. We have to wait and see. We have to be prepared. And that's why we take some tools in our toolkit, because the collaboration and the opportunity for us to learn from our educators in the north is limitless when we speak of the rich culture that is starting to be revitalized. Really is remarkable to go. It's harsh. It's harsh up there. It's cold. I tell you, being outside all day, I have a whole new appreciation for hot tents when it's -40, and we are starting to get cold, but it's good. And then, of course, there is the always the follow-up. So the relationships that we build every time we go into community. I'm very grateful to the ministry that they allow us to continue those relationships and follow up. This will be my 4th deployment. This will be my 4th trip to Yamatong since the fire in January. I feel like, we can do so much more now because we have some relationships with people there. What would you like to know about what we do? I want to be very respectful of your time today. Yes?
You said at the start, you spoke about Category 9 or something?
Treaty 9.
Treaty 9, what area is that?
So it's pretty much, if we think of Anishinaabe Nation, if we think of anywhere north of Savant Lake, Ontario, and we draw a line all the way to the Quebec border and all of the way to the Manitoba border and go up. So we have been as far north as Fort Severn, which is the most northern community in Ontario. We have been as far east on James Bay in Pewanik. Lots of communities just north of here and west, so Cat Lake, Bearskin Lake, North Spirit Lake, lots of those communities as well. It's a massively large area, and it's tricky to get. It's tricky to get out of Kenora for sure. Any airport revitalizers here that could get me to Thunder Bay a little easier, could get me. There isn't. So
Or out of Winnipeg.
Or Sioux Lookout. Yes. So Thunder Bay to Lookout, we have to start looking at what Winnipeg can offer. You're right, because it's massively expensive, and for we're still publicly funded. But it is
and you have
enormously.
To those, you have to arrange all that yourself?
Yes, we do. And it's complicated, and we have to be safe. I mean, safety has to be, we can be delayed in community because we're fogged in for a couple of days, but we have to know that eventually a plane is coming. But it is enormously expensive to fly and to access the north, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big area.
The billeting.
Yes, John.
Have you got numbers on how many students out of the north would be billeted at a percentage, and how many would do online schooling?
That's a really good question, John. I don't have firm data on that. I know that Sioux North High School probably has the largest number of students, and they would have over 100 coming from a variety of communities. So Wendigo and Chibougamau Education Authorities in particular, who both kind of oversee 4 communities themselves. 8 feeder elementary schools in theory. We wouldn't have that many at Beaver Brae. We would probably have less than 20 students from the north, which makes it very difficult for those students, right? To not have that community. It's enormously challenging for the students. My heart weeps.
And there would be, failure isn't the right word, but kids that were so homesick, they would drop out of school and head back home?
100%. Lots, yeah, lots. We celebrate every 5th year grad from the remote north that we can get to graduation. We see more graduating at 20 or being very close to graduating at 20, and we have this wonky rule in Ontario about you can only be in our publicly funded schools until you're 21, and so we really, really celebrate those really close grads and hook them up usually with alt ed if they're not quite finished. But we're talking 5 and 6 year grads too. It's enormously stressful for the youth.
So who arranges the billets, and that's not your job?
That is not our job, no. What we could conceivably do is make those personal connections for the youth. So we're in community, we're getting to know you, we're working with you through elementary school. We can talk to you, arrange virtual tours and then in-person tours. What school do you want to go and explore? Work with those ed authorities and try and get them some. We talk about caring adults in education, and that one caring adult can change the trajectory of a child's education. The more caring adults that we can connect to youth, especially those that are so extremely stressed. We know about the 7 youth from Thunder Bay and all of the work that has been done there, and what all of the support, all of the staff that are available now in Thunder Bay, but we're talking youth need 24/7 safe places. They need havens 24/7 when they are out, and that is really difficult to provide. It's really, really hard, enormously stressful for kids. Yes.
You talked about online learning, so is that becoming more popular? Or?
It's not popular. No, it's not popular. There are a lot of social issues that come with that. It's a very difficult way of learning, for sure. There is much more stable internet in the north now that Starlink has gone in. But even 2 years since Starlink has gone in, I do hear lots of communities say they wish they never had it. They wish they had they are really, really seeing the harm, the increase in anxiety, the increase of the fearfulness of leaving the home and just being trapped in the virtual world. It's not the real world, right? It's larger than us, for sure. And then just access to all of the harsh realities of what's going on in the outside world globally, right, is very, very difficult to process when you're in it 24/7 when you never had it before. Yeah, but it is an option. And so some communities, Pewanak was a really interesting community. They're very, very small. So probably an entire school K-8 of 50 students. So what they do when their kids are old enough for high schools, the entire family leaves community and moves to North Bay. And so they have a very strong partnership with North Bay. It's a great model, right? Windigo Island, a very, very small school. They might have less than 10 students elementary. They send their kids to school in the United States because those kids can come home every night. So their kids cross borders every day to go to school because they come home. In order to go to Fort Francis High School or even elementary school in Rainy River means that they have to board and billet. And the community says, our kids come home better, they're healthier. And we need our kids to live. Our suicide rates in our Indigenous population of youth is still off the charts. It is unbearable to even try and wrap our heads around. And so slowly, these communities are figuring out. But from the remote far north, if you're not big enough to, the government might be building these beautiful big schools, but if they can't staff them, it doesn't matter. And staffing is hard. It's hard. Yeah, it's a struggle.
How many travel together up to these communities? If all four of you go together?
We always travel together as a team. Yes, we just due to staffing last year, we did a couple of deployments with just two of us, thinking that these are educational deployments. But the reality was we were confronted. We were in community on an educational deployment with a school that we were familiar with, and on our first night there, an 11-year-old youth died by suicide, and it threw us into, and it made me realize I've been with the team since inception. I've worked crisis before. But if you're not prepared, and a team of two isn't enough to manage the emotions of reopening a school and debriefing with the staff, we need all hands on deck. So to answer your question, our ultimate goal is to always have a full team when we're going into community, because we could be transitioning into crisis mode at any time. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the reality of the North.
Sure. You mentioned that we know about Thunder Bay. They obviously do. What are the conversations even before the crisis happens, or a crisis happens?
It's preparedness always. So some of the work that we're doing with NAN and the directors of education, and then hopefully the administrators, is kind of twofold. On one, Q8 and Patricia, in our partner, we're working on a mental health champion model that kind of models what we're doing internally as a board, but we're expanding it to communities to try and build that network of mental health champions in community, because of course that's going to be more effective than outsiders coming in and out. And on the other side of that, working with NAN Education and the directors of education on crisis response planning for your schools. Whatever you're doing in a community when there is a crisis is great. How does that translate to what's going on in your schools? How are your school staff being debriefed? What supports are you bringing in to support your school staff and get school reopened? How are you deciding when school is reopening? If it was the death of the youth, how are you managing things culturally or religiously? Does the school need to be cleansed before you reopen? Your teachers from the outside need to know these things. How are you planning for that? And the importance of a plan. Our Indigenous friends are not big documenters. It tends to be everything oral, and lots oral, and but the principals of these schools and lots of the teachers of these schools are not Indigenous and are looking for, what's the plan? What do we do? How do we know? Yeah, what can we expect? So our communities are hearing this, and they're recognizing this, that some of that stability of just having a crisis response plan, having a phone tree. We're in community during a crisis, and we learned from teachers that they were very, very upset because the crisis was happening late at night, and the principal was banging on their bedroom door. You have to get up, you have to get up, come to the nursing station. That was traumatic, right? How about a phone tree? How about we find another way of getting the word out when we need everyone to come together, right? So that we aren't upsetting people, causing trauma, people things like that. And there isn't that planning, like there truly isn't a lot of that planning. So twofold, mental health champion model and just some structures of how to manage a crisis until help can come in. And then maybe you don't even need the help. Maybe you've got it under control.
Just one more. How many more teams like you are there in Ontario?
None.
You're the only one.
We're the only one. Yeah. Yeah. Just us.
Such a large area.
It's a giant area, yeah.
And there
Yeah.
would be areas that aren't covered then, the places that don't have, or do you do every northern?
So we are mandated to be available on request to every community that NAN covers, which means we had a request to go to 6 nations, and we had to decline.
Right.
So you're the only crisis response team for NAN?
For schools.
But is there any other crisis response team for any schools?
Not
Any
for,
communities?
not like the work that we do from the outside. There's lots of crisis teams that support the North, but more often than not, those crisis responders aren't comfortable working with kids. They might know a lot about how.
I'm just saying, we get crises in other communities other than the North.
Yeah.
Is there any crisis teams in school boards for like Southern Ontario or? I mean, I'm just thinking of the incident that happened in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan last week, where the 14-year-old and a 15-year-old fired. You'd think that would have traumatic effect on that entire school and probably the entire
Community
city.
ripples.
But we don't have any in any schools anywhere else in the province either.
No,
That's all
No.
I was asking.
no. Nope.
They have social workers in Saskatoon.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
right.
social work.
Yeah.
And crisis.
Crisis teams in
Yes.
Saskatoon, I would think.
Yes.
Maybe not.
Like Kuwait and Patricia has tragic events response teams for all of our schools. So there's a plan, and then if they need more support, then they draw off of our larger schools and whatnot. But there isn't a mobile team like ours anywhere, nowhere else in Canada. We are it.
Any more questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, but you only service the North.
We only service Treaty 3, and we say we're anywhere Anishinaabe Nation goes. So I think that's 48 communities at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, as you said, the school board itself does have internal for their school.
Yes, and most schools in Ontario would have that tragic events response planning for sure.
Any more questions? Sheri? Okay, well, thank you very much, Sheri, for coming.
Thank you.
Deb's got a little something for you.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Our guest speakers, what we do is we make a donation on behalf of our guest speakers to the Rotary Foundation. And the Rotary Foundation, one of their areas of focus is education. So
That's
it's
wonderful.
kind of fitting. And,
It is
and
very.
there's a certificate to thank you for your talk here. It was
Thank you.
very enlightening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this.